And call the City of Williamston City Council to order. We're going to do the Pledge of Allegiance, so please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Holly, can you call the roll, please?
Lanyon.
Present.
Pratt.
Here.
Jenkins.
Here.
Van Osberg. Rhines.
Here.
Gilroy. Hanson.
Here. And did we hear from both members that were not going to be in attendance?
We did hear from Mayor Gilroy. I'm not sure about Mr. Van Allsburg.
All right, well, can I have a motion to excuse absent members?
I'll make a motion to excuse absent members.
Second. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. All right, approval of the agenda. Do we have any additions or changes? If not, I will take a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as submitted.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Okay, we have audience participation, maximum of 5 minutes for presentation. Would anyone like to come speak at this time?
I just am here to introduce myself. I am Michelle Rosa, and I am the candidate for County Commissioner for District 15. And I appreciate being part of this political process as a retired educator. And if you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out to me now and to Election Day. So thank you.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Anyone else? No? All right, moving on. Council meeting minutes from August 26, 2024. Do we have any changes? If not, I will take a motion to approve those.
Move to approve the minutes.
Second. Thank you. Is this, I can't remember, is this all in roll call? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. All right, accounts payable, I'll go over the review of it and then I'm going to ask someone to make the motion since I'm acting chair. It was a light week this week. We had a few of our tax changes over, but other than that, it's just general spending. So there's nothing that I had any questions on that I needed clarification on. So if there aren't any other questions from members, then I will ask someone to make the motion.
Move to approve checks 77795, 77814, and ACH 1060 to 1076 for a grand total of $194,712.15.
Perfect, thank you. Do I have a second? Thank you. Holly, can you call the roll, please?
Rhines.
Yes.
Lanyon.
Yes.
Hanson.
Yes.
Pratt.
Yes.
Jenkins.
Yes.
Motion passes. All right, on to our action items. We have 3 action items that all relate to the federal grant policies and procedures that we are getting from the grant money for our infrastructure. So I'll turn it over to John, our city manager.
Thank you, Mr. Lanyon. So all 3 of these were prepared for us by Plant Moran. They're helping us with our audit preparation this year. In particular, whenever you qualify for federal grants over a certain amount, you have to do what's called a single audit, and there's a number of things that you have to do. We have not received any funding yet, so in order to make sure that for the current fiscal year that we're in, because we are starting a new fiscal year, that they recommended that we adopt these federal grant policies and procedures. The first one's allowability of cost, the second is procurement, and the third is financial management. We comply with all of these things with our normal procedures, and it is somewhat belts and suspenders to have these, but based on their recommendation and discussing with our current audit firm, they suggested that we adopt these policies. So we can dive into them as much as you want. I'm going to be totally transparent so that if you ask me, I'm going to have to read that section. But I have reviewed them from a high level. And Mr. Mead, our treasurer, who had a family scheduling conflict for today, or he would have been here, but certainly would answer any questions you may have. But it's somewhat long and lengthy, and they do need individual emotions.
Yeah. We'll have our attorney.
And I've looked them over myself. I'm familiar with these. I've had experience with them in any number of contexts. They're consistent with the federal regulations. I have no objections.
Perfect. Questions?
So it seems, this looks like standard kind of boilerplate sort of thing. So this means that we've not had federal grants before? This is the big grant for the paving and so forth, right?
Yeah, correct, thank you.
Yeah.
I can't speak to before February of 2022, but I can tell you that in the last, probably 5 years or so, probably even like 20, I don't think that the city has received a grant above the threshold. I believe it's 750,000. That's the trigger point for what's called a single audit, if you receive that amount. There is we do receive some federal pass-through monies. Actually, North Putnam was part of that, but that was below the threshold. So.
Okay.
And the money we get from the state, from the MDOT thing for the road maintenance,
Yeah.
that's not part of this thing, it's just not
It-
federal.
It is, but it was in the last fiscal year, and it was not above the $750,000 threshold. That part I can.
Okay. Our MDOT number is usually about 400, 500,000, something like that.
That is a different pot of money, and that's correct, and that's through Act 51, which is through the
That's
gas.
what I was trying to
That's
come up
through the
with,
gas,
Act 51.
that's gas tax. Yeah,
Okay, got
Yep.
it. So that's why this is brand new?
correct.
Wow,
You got it.
How about that? Okay.
Any other questions? If not, I'll take individual motions on each of those to approve.
I'll make a motion to approve federal grant policies and procedures, allowability of costs charged to federal programs.
Do you have a second?
Of course.
Thank you. Holly, can you call the roll?
Rhines,
Yes.
Lanyon,
Yes.
Yes.
Hanson, Pratt,
Yes.
Jenkins,
Yes.
Motion passes. Can I have a motion on the second?
I would move that we adopt the policy for procurement as it relates to the federal grant policies and procedures as presented.
Thank you. A second?
Second.
Thank you. Holly, can you call the roll?
Lanyon,
Yes.
Hanson,
Yes.
Pratt,
Yes.
Jenkins,
Yes.
Rhines,
Yes.
Motion passes. And can I have the third motion, please?
I'll make a motion to adopt the federal grant policies and procedures for financial management.
Second?
Second.
Thank you. Holly, can you call the roll, please?
Lanyon,
Yes.
Hanson,
Yes.
Pratt,
Yes.
Jenkins,
Yes.
Rhines,
Yes.
Perfect. Motion passes. That concludes our action items for today. Now we're going to move on to discussion items. Our first up is a discussion on traffic control during power outage. I know that the city got some feedback from citizens after the last power outages, so we have that on as a discussion item. So, John?
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to address this today in discussion, and it's intended to be just that. So, the last 2 summers around about the same time, we have had the main 4 traffic signal go out, and that is our only traffic signal in town. The Zimmer Road and Grand River M43 signal is actually in the township. But so last year when the power went out, the highway was also closed during the tornado, and so the traffic volume was significant. The truck traffic was like significant, and so we did have traffic control at the intersection for a time. And by traffic control, I mean we have a uniformed officer directing traffic. So we did do that last year. Normally, when signals go out, and there's a little excerpt in there from, I think it was the Michigan law, I'm not exactly sure where the citation came from. I pulled it off the internet because anybody can find it. I guess that was the object lesson. But there is an MCL that states what happens when signal intersections go out, and that's any signaled intersection, not just at a state highway. And so it's not actually a 4-way stop, you're per the law, but you're supposed to treat it like a 4-way stop. And so that's what occurred last week. We did have Chief Weiss, he was there. We had our normal presence for this time of year down on the Highland and Church for school traffic, which, as all of you know, is still significant. But Chief Weiss was deployed at that intersection pretty much through the busiest time in the morning, from 7:55 or so to about 9:15.
Yep.
He was observing that and making sure that if there was the need for additional traffic control, we would do that. And I'll let him speak in a minute. But I think I said I don't think I said this in the memo, but this is the 5th or 6th community that I've worked for in my 30 years of doing this. And it is not a common practice, and I frankly don't know of any community that does this. I suppose somebody drops a 4-way sign, because that was one of the suggestions, why don't we do that? But the complex part of that is M43 Grand River is a state highway, and we would have to have permission from MDOT likely to do that. I don't know that for a fact, and I haven't asked for that permission. Our traffic, or our construction manager is here from Spicer too, and while they build roads, I'm sure they probably have, from time to time, have been asked that question, and I don't think that that's a reason and customary thing for people to drop a stop sign, a temporary stop sign at a 4-way. The other thing is when you do have any sign that we put up, whether it's no trucks, 25 mile per hour speed limit, yield signs, they require a traffic control order. And we don't have a traffic control order for the main 4 intersection because it isn't the jurisdiction of that town. So that's kind of the technical aspect. And certainly, you know, as situations would dictate, if we had the perfect storm where the power was out, the highway was closed, and the 2-0 Michigan State Spartans had moved on to 12-0, and their home game was going to be incredibly. Don't appreciate the laughter, Councilmember Rhines. But if they had moved on and it was a sellout crowd, certainly we would have traffic control there. So it's just kind of my viewpoint thing. So, Chief, if you want to maybe offer up your experience a little bit as traffic investigator and your experience with the county.
I will. So over the 30 years I've been in law enforcement, whether the power outage at an intersection, it certainly creates an issue where people have to revert to a 4-way stop. And it's standard practice, and I really can't think of a time when we did traffic control at a 4-way at an intersection that was out, and we actually directed traffic. For a few reasons. Like the city manager says, it is a state highway, and when you put a signage out on a state highway, that's generally not permissible. In fact, I was talking with my cohorts from Weberville, and that's standard practice that not to put a sign out on a state highway. Furthermore, if you've never directed traffic, it's an interesting beast. Because if you are directing traffic, people's attention is on you and not on anything else. So when you're directing traffic at an intersection, they are focused just on you as you're directing traffic. So to deal with 6 lanes of traffic or however many lanes of traffic that you're dealing with takes a certain set of skills and finesse in doing that. And what happens is people will pay attention to you and not pay attention to anything else. And you wave them to go, and there's been dozens of times when I've been directing traffic that you wave someone through and they almost hit a car because they didn't see the car, or hit a pedestrian if it's on campus. So it goes contrary to what people think, but it's actually safer to not direct traffic at an unsigned intersection that goes out, like the main 4 corners, than if we have an officer out there directing traffic. Now, like the city manager says, if we have a high volume of traffic due to the highway being closed, it would certainly be justified to have someone out there directing traffic. But from a risk management standpoint, it's just better and actually safer to not have someone directing traffic. And again, I can't speak to Grand River and Zimmer. That's outside the city. That's a different beast. But it just the concerns that with risk management and at the main 4 corners, it's just better not to have someone directing traffic unless you have the high traffic flow or something, other circumstances, high pedestrian traffic. That's just our training experience in law enforcement. And then that day with the tornado going through, there were dozens of intersections countywide that were out, and busier intersections than ours, and municipalities do not direct traffic. They're all treated as 4-way stops. And there was no issues at all countywide with any crashes at intersections.
So, I'll start and then I'll go to any other discussions that people want to have, but, you know, I traversed through there multiple times throughout the day, and I didn't have an issue. I mean, most everybody, obviously there are some people that aren't paying attention, but, you know, I didn't have any issues with people blowing through it. Everyone was treating it like a 4-way stop. I mean, we all took driver's ed if we're driving, and that's what they teach you in there. So, you know, that's the general rule that we should be applying for. And I would be hesitant to change our patterns because we had some frustrated folks. But, you know, I'm not really interested in putting our officers at risk by doing that, or whatever liability is created by putting someone in the intersection and handling it that way. I mean, again, when we have severe events like the tornado, yes, you know, that's a different, you know, situation. But for, you know, there wasn't a huge windstorm, there wasn't, you know, power lines down, so I think everyone can deal with driving like they want to. So, do we have people that wanna say something? Or Dan, you wanna start, and then we'll just go down?
So, as we've shown just in the conversation here, and as people can see, we handle this, we have a policy, and the general policy is when the power's out, we don't direct traffic for the litany of reasons as were just stated by Chief Wise and City Manager Hanson. But we've also shown that when required, we make exceptions to that, which to me, that's the ideal way to handle this. We've hired Chief Wise because we trust his judgment, and giving him the ability to use that judgment on when traffic control, or when someone is needed there when the power's out, that's the best way to handle this, in my opinion. As they've stated, it's not common practice almost anywhere to have an officer outside of a vehicle directing traffic, and it's actually can be very dangerous for officers doing that. I've had family members who actually, police officers hit directing traffic because people aren't paying attention and they actually run the officer over. That's how it gets at times with that. I think allowing them to exercise their judgment as they have just in the last barely over a year in 2 different incidents, it's been handled 2 different ways because of the actual situations. That's the best we can do as a municipality.
So I get the idea that this is, I heard somebody suggest, well, why don't they have a 4-way stop out there? Well, there's some technical reasons why there's not a 4-way stop out there. My question would be, are there small towns in the area, not on, MDOT highways, but are there small towns in the area where if the power goes out, then somebody goes out and brings a 4-way stop out there? I don't think I've ever heard of that idea. In a way, it may make sense something, but on the other hand, you have a blanket law that says if the power goes out, it's a 4-way stop. So it seems kind of reasonable to me what we did. So,
Did you have an answer to that?
Just kind of comment piggybacking off of that, and Chief can correct me if I'm wrong, but when I was on the fire department, they kind of didn't want us to take over traffic control if we didn't have to, because when the entity or organization or individual or police officer, whoever takes over traffic control, then they kind of assume that liability of that intersection. Is that?
And that's what I was alluding, you're exactly right. When we talk about risk management, the safety of our officers is number one. The safety, we have nothing but the safety of our citizens and motorists in mind. It's most important, but when we look at overall risk management, I don't want the officers getting injured. I don't want the motorist or anyone else getting injured, but we also have to look at the liability of our city. And that's why I said for a motorist focus to be on that officer, and I can tell you, and Officer Calkins can tell you, any officer or fireman that's directing traffic, when you're directing traffic, those motorists look at you, as they should be. But when we direct traffic, there are so many instances of us directing someone to turn, and they almost hit a pedestrian, or they almost hit another motorist, because they're not paying attention to that other motorist or pedestrian, they're paying attention to us. So when we talk about that risk management, we have to manage the risk of our officers, citizens, pedestrians, and quite frankly, the liability of our agency.
I'm not gonna ignore you, Steve, I just want Tim to answer about the liability aspect.
There's a difference between risk and liability. The chief has outlined the risks involved inherent in that activity. All drivers should be aware of this provision. It's in the Michigan Vehicle Code of treating the intersection as a 4-way stop. And they're kind of on their own, and they have to proceed cautiously, and then they're not distracted by somebody telling them what to do and not looking at anything else. And so there is a risk there of the officer getting hit, or perhaps somebody not paying as good of attention because they're relying on the officer and not looking like they should at a 4-way stop. As to liability, we have governmental immunity. Police officers directing traffic are protected by governmental immunity from tort liability. It's not within any exception to governmental immunity, but that doesn't stop anybody from bringing a claim. and we'd have to deal with it. If we're not out there, what are they gonna say? It's on them.
All right, Steve, do you have a question real quick, a quick one?
Yeah, I'm not sure I've seen places where electricity went out and the red light blinks at the stoplight. I guess it's a battery backup system? And what do we have to do to get a battery backup system there?
2026 when we get a new stoplight?
I would assume that would be integrated in the new one.
Yeah.
probably.
That's a really good idea. Okay.
All right, wrapping us up, Steve?
I too went through that intersection several times last week, and when I went through at 7 o'clock, there was almost an accident there. I saw that personally. I went through there at 8 o'clock, and there wasn't a near accident, but there was honkings of horns because they were not paying attention and doing what they should do according with the law, which is, before we stop, you have to proceed, you have to give right away. So my view is, if we can do something, maybe not an officer, maybe the four-way stop sign, to put it out there to remind the individuals, you're supposed to treat this as a four-way stop. Law also says that all drivers coming to a intersection where there's a pedestrian walking, the law says you have to yield right away to them. How many conversations have we had at these meetings where we tried to come up with a plan, because that is not happening? And we'll hear about it later. I'm very pleased what the update might be as it relates to dealing with that issue. I'm not saying put an officer there. I'm saying, can we put something there, stop signs, to remind those that are driving, you're supposed to stop. I mean, the whole issue, the laws are there, people don't adhere to the laws, so what we're trying to do is to remind them what the law is and make it a better, safer location out there. That's my concern, and we, again, talked about it, safety, 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 especially at that four corners, and that's my goal and desire, and I've heard it expressed before here, it's the same as this council. So if we can do anything in that regards, that would be what I would support.
I think, in regards, and correct me if I'm wrong, in regards to the temporary four-way signage, we have to get, because it's a state highway, because it's not Putnam and Church, because it's controlled by MDOT, we have to get permission to put traffic control signage out there. I'm assuming that would have to be even for temporary signage. I don't know if we'd have to, every time, because we're taking it out, putting it back, if we would have to then get permission from MDOT in each instance.
Well, and I think realistically, I think it's not an immediate solution, but as, Terry mentioned, once we have a new traffic light, it will hopefully be powered battery backup, and then will blink red, which will be the signage that you need to show that you're supposed to be stopping.
To that point, the newest stoplight we have in the area at Grand River and Meridian was the only one that was working, and that was put in a year ago, and it had a battery backup on and was working. The one at Cornell Road, which is an older light, still newer than our light here, did not have a battery backup, so we're making an assumption, but we have been told that we would be getting a new light in 26, and I would
That is something we can
that would be a
verify
part of it.
with MDOT to make sure that that's part of what we're getting. Any other comments?
We only do like one power outage per year, right?
We try for zero, but
Okay, so,
We're last on the line.
yes,
so-
we are last on the line.
all right.
All right, so if there's no other discussion on that item, I'd like to move on to construction project update.
Sure, thank you. And because construction out in the neighborhoods wasn't enough, we had to bring construction to the front door
Yeah.
out here. So we appreciate everybody's patience with that. They did just happen in the schedule to do the removals today. And hopefully they'll be pouring tomorrow, so by the next time we at least have a council meeting, and hopefully by next week when we have a whole slew of meetings, that work will be done. And we are doing sidewalk projects at different spots all across town right now. There's a section down by the Museum Depot, there's a section over here, there were also some drive aprons, so we were able to bundle our concrete work for, at least for this fall, and that really saves you on the volume price, and you don't have to do a short load of concrete, so that's good. We did have a punch list walkthrough on Friday?
Thursday.
It was a long weekend, so, a good weekend, but a long weekend. So last Thursday, and we walked Williams and Lloyd, and as well as North Putnam. On Williams and Lloyd, there was some work done by the landscape contractor that's been hired by Iron Horse they did some topsoil and some seeding. We're still dealing with, on all 3 streets, we had the construction contractor, but then we had the underground companies, and there's a couple of addresses that are specific, and you can see, we'd done hydro seeding and some seeding, and some of that took hold, but then NC Contracting, who's SurfNet subcontractor, came through with their bore rig and set it down, so if you see big scarring on any easements still, that's from them, so we're still working with that company. And it's really noticeable. If you head up North Putnam on the east side of the street, they were there recently and they did the bore under the river. And so there's a nice stretch of grass, the first, couple hundred feet or so, then after that it's scarred up, and we're still working with them to get that complete. We are looking to, as part of the punch list on Williams, different treatments to finish the street. I think we've reported on that before, that around the manholes, that there is some scouring done by the company that placed the manholes and did the coring there. So we've got a couple of different options that we're looking at, and we'll be executing those. But as I mentioned to residents, and I had this great discussion with a resident today on Williams, that we're far from done. The major construction work is done, but we're not walking away from the restoration and things out there. So that's the construction update. Like I said, Phil from Spicer's here. Happy to answer if you have any other additional questions, be happy to answer those.
Anyone have anything?
What's the general survival rate for the trees that have been put in?
So far, I mean, we're above the curve, put it that way.
The curve is like
Normally,
70%
yeah,
or something.
70%, so we're probably gonna lose a couple for sure.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's actually a great point. We will be, we do have, I think it's about 8 more that we'll have to plant, so that we plan to do, and we're gonna do that here in the next couple weeks.
So somebody comes along and fills the gator periodically?
That's correct, yep.
Okay, cool, good.
Any other questions or comments? No? Let's move on to master plan.
So we had I thought a really great discussion on the master plan. We had a full agenda at the planning commission last week, and I'll let Mr. Lanyon report on that as the council liaison to that group. But we had a really good discussion, and we were focusing, and again, this is one of many work sessions that we'll have over the next 9 months or so. We were focusing down in the area, the north and south Linden Road areas, in that or the commercial corridor down there. So we had a good discussion. Folks continue to fill the survey out, and I think we're settling on a date of 2 weeks from this Friday when we'll close the survey. But we've got a great response. As part of the integrity of the survey, we can't really divulge any early returns on what people are saying, but really worked well with the card mailer that we did.
Yeah.
I talked to Mr. Keyser from Canada today. We're going to do one last push to get folks to sign it up. We have had some folks drop off some paper surveys, and we count them all. So so certainly, if you want to drop a paper copy off, we'll certainly do that. But it's been a really good discussion so far, and we'll be back at it again at the meeting in October.
I said I'll add, I think we were roughly at 500 responses to the survey, which is great. Surveys usually don't get that much response, a good return rate, so that's pretty positive. I'll do the whole planning commission in my committee report, but we had 2 residents that live in one of the neighborhoods down on Putnam towards the freeway attend the planning commission meeting solely for discussion on master plan. And I think it was very helpful because obviously the biggest section of undeveloped area we have is that corridor there. And so we were able to have conversations with them about what they would like to see that look like, what kind of, what they want the actual buildings to look like, what kind of businesses they'd like, because as we've heard from the meetings we've had, there's a lot of consternation about what our zoning does and doesn't allow, what our master plan does and doesn't allow, and so hearing from the folks that it will impact most, I think was very helpful, going forward. And I'm, excited for when we get our survey results so that we can see what our fine citizens would like us to do as we move forward on the master plan. All right, and last we have our main force safety improvements.
So we shared at the last meeting some design concepts, and we're gonna continue to refine those. We're coordinating schedules to meet with the right MDOT folks to talk about what we can and can't do. I think Mr. Westmoreland from Spicer's reported on this, and I'll say it again. Everything we're proposing has been done in other communities. You know, it's just getting on the right schedule and then coordinating with MDOT who does the work. But so there are still some, it's unlikely it'll be done before winter this year, but we're hopeful for spring of 2025 that we'd be able to put the treatments in place. And along the way, and not to bring this discussion back up about traffic control during the power outage, but we'll certainly bring up the conversations on what is allowed or isn't, or what would it look like to have temporary stop signs or not. And more importantly, I think probably long-term is making sure that the signal has battery backup. And I can tell you my experience with a turn signal it was actually the major intersection, it was in town, but a major intersection of a state highway and a county road. That anything above the base model, the local community has to pay for, including the actual physical support of it. The kind of the base off the lot model is the signal hanging by wires. If you want to do a mast arm or anything more, visually pleasing than that, the community has to pay for it. I know I for one would certainly pass the hat to raise money for battery backup for the signal.
Yeah.
So we'll make sure that that's made known. Frankly, they're probably, I'm sure there has to be some configuration of solar-powered battery backup. I mean, that's a fairly common thing in traffic devices, especially now that most of them are LEDs instead of the old incandescent bulbs.
Yeah.
So again, Phil, I don't know if you have anything to add at this point, but we're just trying to get on folks' schedule, and state has a little bit just different fiscal year than us, so they're kind of wrapping up their fiscal year and marching in the beginning of their new one. So, so that's the main point.
Can we now, before the other plan gets fully decided upon, can we restripe the crosswalks like we have throughout the city?
Because that's a great question. Because those are in the MDOT, even north and south Putnam, they're in the MDOT overlap fringe right away. I mean, we heard that during the discussions of the road diet, that we would need them to issue the traffic warrant to allow us to do that. And I think that we, frankly, at this point, we should wait, because there's a minor cost consideration for it, because we may end up doing, my preference is, and it's more expensive than paint, to actually do the pigmented asphalt, so it's a different color. And there's lots of things you can do with that. I mean, you can add even it's almost like a iridescent or glow-in-the-dark type paint, so that it really shines at night. So, I mean, we can ask, but they'll likely push us to, well, you're doing this work later in the year, so why would you do it now?
So is it their responsibility then to
Correct.
paint?
Yes.
You can't see any of those lines whatsoever. So wouldn't a city have the right to go to them and say, this is your road, this is creating safety concerns because you're striping, you haven't painted it or repainted it? I mean, to me, that,
We could run out there and rattle can it tonight.
somebody that got hit, some of you almost got hit this past weekend, posted on Facebook, Mitch Lutsky, who some of you might know, he said he had a new approach and he was going to donate bricks. And you thought maybe if you could throw that brick through the window of someone that's not adhering to the state mandated laws that said that you are supposed to right away to the pedestrians, that might change how people slow down with that.
To be clear, city council's not advocating that you throw bricks at cars.
I don't think felony destruction of property and about 7 other felonies is something that we should, recommend that people do.
Yeah.
And even adjust. I also don't think, this is kind of a discussion for next time for our council rules in regards to social media and how we choose to react to it.
Mhm.
So, I don't have anything else to add on the board.
For what it's worth, again, I want to reiterate that I've shown that plan to some people, and there's been no negative comments at all, except the let's do it, let's do it now. So it's a good plan, and let's get it done.
Wheels of government turn slowly, so we're getting there.
Yes, we-
All right, so we'll wrap up the discussion items. I see we did receive correspondence from Consumers Energy, notice of hearing, something that we, regularly get. So that was included in your packet. We'll move on to department head reports, city manager.
The River Days was a great success. I saw Earl Wolf this morning over by the turbine, and we do have a permanent signage for that, and we'll also have a permanent location for that. So it's my understanding that the event was great. I was out of town for a wedding, so wasn't able to make it, but I heard it went well. Just remind folks that coming up in October, there's a lot going on. Found out that there's going to be a ghost walk the first weekend in October, which is kind of cool. We have chainsaw art in the park the second weekend in October. Third weekend, I think everybody's taking off and regrouping, and then the fourth week we'll have trick-or-treating and events downtown. So there's a lot of cool things happening. Next week we have Monday's TIFA, Tuesday's DDA, and Thursday is Parks. So the wheels of government are moving fast, at least here in the city of Williamston, so that's good. So it's a busy month, and that's all I have to report. Thanks.
Awesome. Chief?
Thank you. My report was attached to the city council agenda for the statistics. For the department highlights, of course, we completed the monthly use of force report for the state. We did complete, myself and administrative assistant Bonnie Green, did an evidence property room audit and inventory where we actually went through and touched every piece of evidence in our evidence room and married it up with our inventory of what we're supposed to have. And I can't take credit for it. I have to pass the credit on to previous chiefs and Bonnie, but there was 100% accuracy. With just some minor misplacement of items that were corrected, but I was very, very pleased with that audit. Yes, sir.
How many items? Is this 100 items or 1,000?
We have about 800 some items
For
of
real?
evidence.
Wow, okay.
And if it's a case that's intricate, it may involve 40, 50 items. We have a couple cases that are intricate like that, but it took us a whole day doing that audit, but I was very pleased. And previous chiefs, previous officers, and Vonnie should be very proud of the work they've done. They did an excellent job. We're back attending fall sporting events at the schools. I attended the football game last Friday, as Officer Calkins did, and I saw a few of you there, but it was a busy game until it rained. So and we'll continue doing that with football, soccer, volleyball, and all the other events that are going on at the schools. The school resource officers and myself attended a tabletop exercise today at the high school in conjunction with Williamston Community Schools area first responders, where we exercised a portion of their emergency operations plan. And that went very well, to see good cooperation with our mutual aid partners. And I won't steal the city clerk's thunder about upcoming election safety plans. That's all I have. I'm sorry. Oh, yes, Officer, soon-to-be Officer Matthew Peets graduated from the Washtenaw Community College Police Academy. Officer Calkins and I attended the graduation ceremony Friday afternoon, and it was an excellent ceremony. A lot of good people from around the state, and it was a very touching graduation. It was really well done. So he'll be joining us in about 2 weeks after he takes a much needed rest from the game.
Excellent. So that bring us up to full?
That will bring us up to 5 of 6 full-time officers.
Cool. Excellent.
With another officer, a reserve officer, will be attending the Mid-Michigan Police Academy starting in January, and then that will bring us up to full staff.
Excellent. The only thing I have is my son met the school resource dog and was very excited about it.
Yes, Emily from the schools.
Yes.
Was Zebra Canine.
Yes.
Yes. The school's superintendent has requested that dog attend the sporting events as well, which is great to see.
Yeah.
Having their explosives dog attend the school events. So
Yeah.
she's very nice.
Yeah, he was very excited. He was like, the dog sniffed my backpack. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to tell you why. But he was very excited about meeting the dog. All right. Now, Holly, would you like to talk about elections?
Yes, we do have our November election coming very soon. We are really, really focused this year on safety and any kind of threats that might be upcoming. Both Jeff and I have attended some trainings and some exercises. During the August election, we did Narcan training with all our inspectors, all of our city staff, as well as discussing what to do with envelopes that might look suspicious. There are reports all over the state of election officials receiving envelopes with white powder substances in them. And so we want everybody to stay safe with the Narcan, with rubber gloves and everything when they're handling the mail. We also put our information to 911 for swatting purposes, to make 911 aware that if they get a call about our addresses, that, you know, to treat it with caution. It could be false, and that actually did happen, I believe, in DeWitt. Their city clerk and their city manager were both swatted, so it is a serious issue, even very close by. I know I have attended multiple trainings, and I think we might be going to another one in October to do some more strategies. So we're just doing our best to prepare for whatever this throws at us, and if it doesn't, that'd be great. But it's always good to be prepared for the worst and then be like, yay, nothing happened. So
At least it's a low emotion election.
yes. Yeah,
Yes.
it'll be great. And I would encourage, like council especially, to show everybody what early voting is about, because it is just like your voting day. You come in, you fill out your application, and you put it in a tabular, just like you would voting day. You just have 9 extra days to do it, which is fantastic. I mean, we should all take part in that. So I would love for you guys to come in and even let everybody know on your social media outlets, like, hey, I just early voted. It was awesome. There also was a voting sticker contest throughout the state, and there were, I believe, 9 voted on designs that they are going to be putting out, so hopefully we can get some of those in time for early voting and elections. That'll be kind of fun way to support that. So if you guys have any questions or concerns, please do contact us.
So, one, do you think you're gonna have enough volunteers to cover? I know that these
I
extended.
think so.
Okay.
We've had quite a few new applicants in the last month, so people are definitely interested, and the state also puts out a list.
Yeah.
So they support it.
And is there anything that you need from us or that we can do to help besides the social media?
Just be positive. That's what I tell everybody, even
Yeah.
my election inspectors, I tell people, you know, try to stay positive. You know, it could be, you know, people don't like what they're doing or they don't trust things. Just try to be positive, and people kind of get that feeling from you too. So that's probably my #1 thing is keep everybody happy and enjoying the process, because it's a safe process and we want everybody to feel comfortable with it. And if they have any questions, you know, there's always public testing. You can be an election inspector. You can see how everything works, and so always support it.
Yeah. Any questions?
Did I see a number on your report of something like 34% turnout or
Yes,
something?
34% turnout for August.
Okay. How does that compare with previous primary
It was
type things?
about the same. We did run the
Pretty
numbers for the last 4 years, and they were fairly similar. It's a little lower than our last couple of years, though, but only by like maybe 1%.
For the quadrennial, then what's the usual kind of turnout for that? For the 4-year, for the big election, the real? Is it turnout like more like 70%, 80%?
Yeah, I think it was close to 80% last time, 76%, I believe.
Okay,
So
just
it's pretty high, and we actually, even our AV ballots, we do a really good job of getting people to return them. We had a 98% return rate on our AV ballots last year, or last presidential election. So we are really good about, you know, emailing people and reminding them like, hey, we haven't received your ballot yet, so they'd love to see it.
Okay,
We can
cool.
get them turned in.
Perfect. Anyone else? No, all right, thank you, Holly.
Great progress, by the way, from, compared to, when was it, like, it was December or something? You came to the city council meeting and said, all the city clerks are going, how do we do this? To, like you said, there's 2 down, 1 to go, so,
Yeah,
nothing to it.
yeah.
Good job.
All right, we're gonna move on to committee, subcommittee reports. Does anyone have a committee that they attended? Just me? Okay. So we did planning. I talked about master plan already, but in exciting news, we've had long conversations, and the school has had long conversations with us about housing. We do have a new developer coming in that wants to develop, down on Lynn, closest to Putnam. So they came to planning to ask for a rezoning, and a special land use, and so we, were recommended that those be approved, and so that should be on our docket in the near future, for us to do that. But essentially, they are looking to take a almost 15-acre parcel of land, that's right behind the antique store there, and they're going to make, 4 2-story buildings that would have, 1 2-bedroom apartments in it, studios, and then a larger one, farther back, so it's not right on the highway or right on the main road and away from the houses. And a clubhouse and a park area, so they have this massive plan, and how much is like 100 person capacity?
Yeah, give it,
Yeah.
thank you. So there are a couple of steps in the process. The rezoning will have to be approved by this board. If it is, then they'd be eligible to submit a site plan. For the maximum density on a property of anywhere in that zoning district, I think it's around 150 units, and it's a calculation based on the number of acres that are there.
Yeah.
Because there's setbacks and things like that, so.
And so, yeah, so that's, 150 units, up to, I think there's gonna be less than that, but, of new property, that someone could move into.
Like duplexes, kind of, is that what?
No, so they're gonna be, kind of like, I don't know, they're gonna be kind of like townhomes. They're gonna be rentals, but, not, Section 8 rentals, it's just gonna be what they're doing, but, the developer was there at the meeting. Obviously, we haven't seen site plans yet, but they seem very open to all the concerns that, the neighbors had that attended. There was concerns about lights, there was concerns about having to look at buildings, and every single one of them, the concerns they had, they're like, no, we're gonna address that, we're gonna have lights that don't shine up in the sky, so like you won't see it unless you're coming in. They're gonna make the facade match what we want it to match, so a lot of the concerns that were raised by the residents were seemingly understood and alleviated by the developer. So obviously we'll know once they do a site plan if council, when it comes up, approves that, but we've been talking for years about how we need more housing, and while it's not, single-family housing like obviously we would love, this is I think a good first step to developing that area and getting more housing for us.
Yeah. So this is 15 acres, and that's a 150-acre plot, right?
The backside, yeah, I don't know who owns what, but
So this is like 10% of the whole
Yeah.
Williamston Road overlay thing. That's not bad. That's, yeah.
If I can, it's a separate
Yeah.
parcel of land from the large 125, give or plus or minus acres that immediately adjacent to highway.
Right.
This is like a rectangular piece that's due west of the antique store.
Due west. Got it. So between the antique store and Deer Creek.
Yeah,
Yep,
exactly.
Okay.
yeah.
Yep.
And the developers are local folks. He raised his kids and lived there, and he just moved out, but, so they are very much wanting to just bring into, they're not national coming in to do what they want. They're trying to make it work, so I think it'll be good at the end of the day. And that's my report. We don't have anything else. We have our last chance for audience participation, 5 minutes, if anyone would like to speak. Not, moving on, we'll go to council member comments before we go into our closed session, so I'll start with Dan.
Real quick, I know I have people that approach me about different issues in town with the Four Corners safety things, and people email me, different things like that. But the vast majority, and when people email me, when people reach out to me, I try to be very responsive to that. We have lots of ways to communicate with the city, ways to communicate with city council, email, phone calls, all these different things that get, if not immediate response, very quick response. And if people are having a ton of close calls at the intersection or all those things, I'm sure we can take a report on that if you're if you have a close call. And those are things that when we have those quantifiable numbers that help when you're going to talk to MDOT. Oh, well, we had, in the last 3 months, we had 10 different people make reports at the police station where they were nearly hit by a car because they weren't paying attention. What we can't quantify the numbers on is complaints on social media. So when people actually reach out in a tangible way, it makes our jobs easier. Who else?
Jerry? No comment.
Steve?
Just on the social media, it sounds like we'll be reviewing those issues in the future, but social media is a way for the public to express their concerns and their wants and their desires. I don't think it should be diminished. I think from my perspective, I don't respond to anything on social media. I don't respond to anything that I read on Facebook. I may bring it to the attention of somebody, but I think that, for me, if you get into a back and forth, this world is full of negatives and positives, and you'll find that if you involve yourself for responding and trying to argue and fight with someone on Facebook. But it does allow for, I think, it does allow for the, I guess, a focus into what the concern is of those that are on there. And just because it's on Facebook or social media doesn't mean it's irrelevant, it doesn't mean that it's not a valid concern.
Fair enough.
Thank you. All right, I don't have anything to add on to that. I think those were good comments. Oh, yeah.
So, if we move into the closed session, the statute's been amended, so now it has a section 1 and a section 2.
Okay.
And so the grounds for going into closed session that are A, B, C, it's actually MCL 15.268 parens 1, parens C, in this instance. Somebody's gonna make a motion to include statutory reference.
Yep. All right, so we are, I'm gonna accept a motion to go into closed session, which means that we'll have the room empty so we can have a discussion. Can I have someone please make that motion?
So do we need to amend what's on the, here for what was?
As long as we discuss it.
Specifically, can you provide guidance on what they should do?
I think the thrust of the agenda item is adequate to go into closed session for collective bargaining as allowed under the Open Meetings Act.
Okay, so if we say that.
But I'm just suggesting that when you make the motion and you reference the particular subsection of subsection 1 of NCL 15.268, that you reference that.
You got that, boss?
No, but I'm not giving it a shot. I'm gonna make a motion that we enter closed session to discuss capital city labor program, Williamston, Michigan Police Department collective bargaining allowed under the Open Meetings Act.
MCL
MCL
15.268 1C.
1C.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Support.
Thank you. Can I have a roll call?
Jenkins,
Yes?
Rhines,
Yes.
Hanson,
Yes.
Lanyon,
Yes.
Pratt.
Yes.
Thank you. We are now going to go into closed session. All right, coming back from closed session, so with no further business on our agenda, I will adjourn our meeting at 8:04.